first I was going to start going over the Feast of the Lord, because last week there was that half-hour Michael Rood video on it. But I got excited about something that I read, and I thought I got to tell them, because after all, we're talking about prophecy and how it's relating to right now. So just to back up for a little bit, we are in, according to the timeline that I'm presenting to you, you can take it or leave it, but we're in the second week of Jacob's trouble. And I'll just touch on that analogy again, because we're getting new people in, so I just want to make sure you understand where I'm coming from. The analogy of the second week of Jacob's trouble finds that it's coming in at the time where Jacob has been in Laban's household for 14 years. He worked the first 7 years for Rachel, didn't get her. Laban said, I'm going to give you Rachel anyway if you work for me for another 7. So as the second week begins, Jacob's already been in Laban's household for 14 years. And keep in mind, we're talking about the 3 weeks, the 777 of Jacob's trouble. So where we are on this timeline is, at this point in 2008, and we talked about the sabbatical cycles, the year 2007 to 2008 was a Sabbath year, but it belonged to the previous cycle, which we said was a rehearsal because of the Oslo Accords. It was a good time, just like Jacob was happily working for Rachel the first 7 years, thinking at the end he's going to get her. And the analogy to that is Israel, when the Oslo Accords were announced on Rosh Hashanah, 1993, the Sabbath year, Israel worked for that next 7 years happily, because they thought at the end of it they were going to have peace. So it was Israel's desire. Jacob's desire was Rachel. Israel's desire was peace. At the end of it, they found out they were lied to. So we're coming into, from 2008, the beginning of that new sabbatical cycle, which is the second week of Jacob's trouble. We're finding out, we're not even at the end of it yet. We won't be at the end of it until 2015, when the new cycle starts. So these things that are happening now that we're seeing in the news and everything is this ongoing second week of Jacob's trouble that we're still experiencing. In 2008, at the very beginning of that new sabbatical cycle, the second week, what happened? That's when that stock market crashed. What happened was Jacob had decided to contract with Laban for his economy, for his herds and his flocks, to get an inheritance that he could take back home with him when he finally leaves Laban's household. So everything was focused on him building his wealth through the flocks and herds. Well, same exact analogy in 2008. What happened globally? The global attention turned to the economy. And here we see in the stock market crashed at 777.68. It happened to be the Jewish year of 5768. And the 3 sevens, I think, were calling attention to those who are looking, those who know. And you can know. If you're attuned to that, if you're studying that, if you're searching for that, you're going to know. So I immediately thought, there's the 3 sevens. There's the 21 years. There's the 3 weeks of Jacob's trouble in the year 5768. How much clearer could it be? You know, without God striking lightning on you. So we're coming down to that. It's now 2013. We still have a little ways to go before the new sabbatical cycle. So that's where I want to pick up from the timeline into what I found out this past week and present that to you so you can see how that's tying in to this time. Because what we're coming into at the end of the second week of Jacob's trouble is going to be the fulfillment, in my opinion, I have to add that, it's going to be the fulfillment of Psalm 83 the destruction of the people of Edom, the descendants of Esau, the Palestinians. You can see where that's going now, with all the talks are starting up again with the Palestinians, with Abbas and all that. And, well, I'll get into that because that's my paper, but it's also going to see the fulfillment of the oracle against Damascus. And you can see what's happening in Syria. It's just a mess. It's going to come to an end. Damascus is going to become a heap of ruins.
You want me to read that?
Yeah,
It's 17:1, correct?
I think so.
The burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. That's King James.
Ruinous heap. And when if I'm talking to somebody that's not, really into prophecy or something, a lot of times I'll get, wars over there have happened all the time. Jerusalem itself has been destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed and rebuilt. Everything over there is like that. But this says it will never be inhabited. That's never happened. Damascus is the longest inhabited city in history. It's always been inhabited. This says it will be a ruinous heap, never to be inhabited again. And that's coming. And you can see with what's going on over there, I'm sure you follow that in the news, the stockpile of the kind of weapons they have and all that is just, and it's spilling over. It's right now there's boots on the ground of our own troops over in Jordan because they're trying to keep a line from it spilling over into Jordan. And there's they've got the Israelis are up in the Golan Heights and they're patrolling up there and everything, and to keep it from coming over there. But it's going to come over. There's going to be a huge battle or something's going to happen because even and it's not going to leave Israel unscathed. It's that because the scripture, I should write scriptures down, I don't remember references. But it says the cities in Israel will burn. So it's going to be a back and forth, but Damascus is going to be wiped out. We've got to see this between now, and Israel is saying that they see a war, some war, before the end of this year, before the end of 2013. But these two things have to happen before the start of the third week. And the reason for that is when the third week starts, the last 7 years starts, which is the 70th week of Daniel, when the Antichrist is going to come on the scene and God's wrath is going to be poured out upon the people on the earth. That's going to be, God's going to supernaturally deliver Israel in the Ezekiel 38 war. That's going to be the catalyst that turns Israel back to God. When they see that God delivered them, they're going to turn back to their old covenant with Him. I used to think, God's not going to allow anybody to start sacrifices again or rebuild the temple until Jesus comes. And He's going to build the next temple. And I really believed that for a while because I thought Jesus' sacrifice was once for all. That's it. There's no more sacrifices for anything. But the Jews are not in the new covenant. The Jews are still in the old covenant. So when they finally turn back to God because of seeing His deliverance for them, they're going to turn back to Him, and what are they going to do? We need a temple. We need the sacrifice again. So now I've changed my thinking on that. I made the mistake of spiritualizing too much because I was thinking we're the temple. When the Antichrist comes, he's going to sit or stand in the temple and declare himself God. That I thought, well, that can mean he's standing amongst the believers, and we're the temple. But I choose now to think that it's more literal than I had given it credence for. So this war of Ezekiel 38 is going to be the turning point, which will start that last week, the 70th week. And I don't like to use the word tribulation because the whole 7 years is not tribulation. It's there. Jesus never used the word tribulation. He said there will be a great tribulation, but that doesn't start till halfway through. So I just would prefer to call it Daniel's 70th week. And at the very beginning of it, because the Jews have experienced this war and the victory from it that God gives them, and they call for the temple to be rebuilt, and when the world sees what they've just done to the Palestinians and to Damascus and all this that's happened, that's when the person who will be identified later as the Antichrist is going to come in and say, or he's going to confirm the covenant. And I gave you that paper, the one I passed out, and I didn't go into it here, but I wrote about the covenant, what the covenant is. It's Israel's right to live in the land that God gave them. God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the Antichrist, even though he isn't revealed yet at the very beginning, he will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. So we know that's the 7 years, and that's going to be the last 7 years. So with everything that's happening now, as it gets closer and closer to these wars, you're going to see other things start to happen that will confirm to you who are watching for these things to develop. And the more you see and the more you know and the more that's confirmed to you, you're going to be ready. Because Jesus said, you're not of the darkness. I'm going to come as a thief, but not to you. You're going to know. You can know what time it is. You can know what's going to happen. You know the times and the seasons. So as you're seeing this, I know you're already seeing a lot of this stuff. People that don't know anything about prophecy know something's happening. They're expecting something huge to happen and not just another war. They know that something is going on. So at that point we're coming into the very last time of the second week of Jacob's trouble. I'll start on what I wanted to bring to you tonight. So before the Bible was ever given to man, God had a plan. And it's to that foreordained plan that he's working right now. And we're seeing it. In this 7th day. We are in the 7th day. The 7th day could be, if you count the 1,000 years, yes, that's going to be the millennial kingdom. But we're in a pause right now between the 69th year and the 69th week. No, wait. I'm getting myself mixed up. We're in a parenthetical pause right now between the ending of the 6th day and the beginning of the 7th day. This is the time frame we're in. It's almost like a little vacuum to allow these things to happen, because what did we say in the beginning? There's no imminency. It has to have an appointed time for these things. It can't just happen without you knowing it. It's an appointed time, and it's something you're going to know is coming and going to happen. So we're in the 7th day, the Lord's Day. The 6,000 years ended in 5760, which was the year 2000. And the plan's clearly outlined in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. And man can know God's plan if you will only come to the Bible and submit your mind and your heart to the Holy Spirit. And he'll tell you. I was just talking before we started about this intuitive feeling that I get, that when I just know that I know when something's not right. I don't, or at least it makes me go and research it to find out what's really going on. But today there's a deliberate refusal on the part of most people, including even those who call themselves Christians, and especially the religious or church leaders, to consult the prophetic scriptures. You will not find this in church. They won't talk about it. I've been to churches where I've tried to get them to talk about it. Not have me teach it. I wanted them to talk about it so I could sit and listen. Couldn't find it.
That's why we're here.
Hmm?
That's why we're here.
Amen.
Well, okay, exactly. Because my next sentence on my paper is, that's why we find ourselves here.
Prophecy.
Look around.
Spoken into existence.
That was good timing.
Yeah.
So look around. How many are here? Well, I'm glad to see we're growing, but how many are here? The fact that there are so few of us is not a legitimate reason to not study God's foreordained plan. So on that note, I want to call your attention to something recently in the news. John Kerry. Have you all heard that John Kerry has been working over there with trying to start up the peace talks again?
Did you know that the Temple
Yeah,
Mount
newsman.
is, they're trying to work that into the agreement of peace with the
Oh
Palestinians?
yeah, the final status.
Yeah, that's in there.
They will build a temple.
Oh, they will. I think they're close. They have everything lined up, the red
Exactly.
apron, all of the gowns, materials. They just need that clearance to do it.
Yep, I've seen it. I've been in the Temple Institute. Every time I go over, I'm in the Temple Institute. John Kerry has been working nonstop to bring Israel and the Palestinians into another round of peace talks. He recently made a statement concerning the beginning of final status arrangements with a 9-month countdown. What's the significance? This is when I read this, it was like, oh, gotta tell them, I can't wait till Saturday.
I'll give you.
Well, the significance is that this 9-month countdown will coincidentally take us to exactly the time of Passover.
Wow.
You may ask, what's the significance of that? The significance of that is it will also bring us coincidentally to the exact time of the first of the 2014-2015 blood moon lunar eclipses, the tetrads, which will fall exactly on Passover, April 14th.
Oh, wow.
How can anybody deny that God is not working this together to bring about his plan? A 9-month countdown. Birth pangs. I'm not saying it's the tribulation, but it's still a 9-month period of birth pangs, bringing this to Passover, which is when the first of the blood moon tetrads are going to show up on Passover.
Don't we live in exciting times?
Exciting. I can't wait.
Didn't
The
they
blood
say
moon's always,
I'll get to that.
okay.
Mindy, it's perfect timing because my next sentence is.
Sorry, I did not read that.
No, I was just telling what I was
You
going to
know.
talk about. Now, the blood moon lunar eclipses are a phenomenon that have happened continuously throughout history. This is what I get from people. That's always happened. You know, oh, you're taught, there are always wars, there's always this, there's always that. As people like to say, so what else is new? NASA says that there will be a blood moon tetrad, and also significantly 4 solar eclipses sandwiched in between. And this will happen between 2014 and 2015. But what is the key difference in the blood moon tetrad for 2014 and 2015 if they've been happening regularly throughout history? It's not regularly though. There's only been,
3 or 4?
well, over the past 1,000 years, there's only been like 100.
But the last 30, it's only been 4.
Yes, yes, that's
1949,
right.
when Israel became a state.
Yeah.
1967,
49,
68.
50,
Yeah.
and then 67, 68,
You read
when
your paper,
the Six-Day
didn't you?
War happened.
Yeah.
And both those times, what did they portend for Israel? War.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's significant too that there's 4 solar eclipses sandwiched in between. And there's even more significance to that. The more I looked into this, it was like, phew, yeah. So what is the key difference in the blood moon tetrad for 2014, 2015? The key difference is these blood moon tetrads will occur when the Lord's feast days, Passover and Tabernacles. Passover is the first feast, Tabernacles is the last feast. So it's encompassing. You can look at that as though it's encompassing everything. And it'll happen 2 years in a row. So is something significant going to happen? Because remember, they portend war for Israel. Every time they've shown up, it's been a war. So is something significant going to happen in 2014 and 2015, which will involve Israel and the world? Could an occurrence like this be tied to a great prophetic fulfillment? Say a devastating war prophesied by the prophet Ezekiel? Because see, keep in mind that when Damascus is wiped out, and when the people of Eden are wiped out, that's going to be done by Israel's, as the Bible calls it, exceedingly great army, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. They're the ones going to handle this, not God. I mean, God is directing them and allowing them, but it is Israel's army, which is still basically, most Israelis are still secular. They're Jews, but they're not Orthodox believers, observant. Most of them are not in the old covenant relationship with him, even though they still observe because the government requires them to observe certain things. The whole IDF army is kosher. I know I worked in the kitchen for 3 years over there, and we had a blue kitchen for dairy and a red kitchen for meat. So they're still doing what God's directing them to do, but they yet don't know why. And that's another study for the bones, the bones coming together.
Valley
And-
Dry Bones.
Right, the Valley of the Dry Bones, and now they're on their feet, but the breath is not in them yet, meaning the Spirit is not in them yet. You know when the Spirit's going to come in them? After the Ezekiel 38 war, when they turn back to Him. They will then have His breath in them. And they're going to have to, 'cause then they're going to have to withstand the whole last week to bring them through to redemption. So, where was I? So you can see with the time period we're in, we don't have much time left until the new sabbatical cycle beginning on Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, ahead of the new year, 2015. It's not that much time between now and then to have these 2 fulfillments done, which will, again, I keep repeating it, but that's how I keep myself straight. That will be the catalyst for the Ezekiel 38 war, causing them to turn back to God, call for their temple, the confirming of the covenant, the opening of the first seal, because that's the Lord saying, hey, the rider on the white horse is coming with a bow and no arrows. He's bringing peace. The covenant with death is going to be peace. He's going to destroy with peace, is what Daniel says. He will come and destroy with peace. So God's eternal plan is incredibly revealed through the nature and the timing of the 7 feasts of the Lord. That's why it's so important to understand the 7 feasts of the Lord. If you can understand, and we'll be going over them, but I had to do this thing this week. The 7 feasts of the Lord is your life, because everything is demonstrated through those feasts to bring you through to eternal life. It was on Mount Sinai that God gave Moses the dates and the observances of the seven feasts. When do they happen? What are they based on? They're based on the phases of the moon. Each month in a lunar calendar begins with a new moon, HaKodesh. Passover falls on the first full moon of spring, first of the tetrads. The first three feasts, Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits, fall in March and April. The fourth one, Shavuot, or Pentecost, occurs in late May or early June. The last three, trumpets, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, happen in September and October. So understanding the feasts of the Lord is the most critical component of Bible prophecy. You have to know the feasts of the Lord. You have to know the sabbatical cycles. You have to know what the sun and the moon and the stars are bringing, not just seasons. They're created for signs. So these tetrads occurring on Passover and Tabernacles in 2014 and 2015 are of prophetic significance. Now I mentioned that in between the 4 lunar eclipses, on Passover and Tabernacles, there would be solar eclipses sandwiched between them. Now, this is why it's significant. When they will occur. I'm going to just hold it up. I wish I had an overhead or something. Whoop.
We'll have to start doing that for you.
Okay. In 2014, I know you guys can't see that. In 2014, we start out, I'm going in chronological order. Oh, I'm sorry, I should get back here.
Sorry.
The first one is head of the biblical year. Oh, let me just back that up. Israel has the Hebrews have 2 calendars. One starts the biblical calendar, and the next one starts the civil calendar. The biblical calendar starts Nisan 1, which is Passover, or right before Passover. So the head of the biblical year, Nisan 1, 5774, that's 2014, is on April the 1st. That's what it opens up with, Passover. And we see what's going to happen with John Kerry and his 9-month plan. Then on April 15th, about 2 weeks later, we have the first of the Passover lunar eclipse on April 15th. Now, I think April 14th is actually the eve of Passover, because the Jewish day starts in the evening. It goes evening to evening. And then, 2 weeks later, we have a solar eclipse on April 29th. Then, the head of the civil year, Rosh Hashanah, head of the new year, is on Tishri 1 on September 25th. 2 weeks after that, Tabernacles lunar eclipse on October 9th. And then the year closes, well, not closes, but the last of the tetrads and eclipses. The solar eclipse comes about 2 weeks later again on October 23rd. But there's something even more significant in 2015. The solar eclipse is first, the day before the opening of the biblical year, the day before. March 20th, and the head of the new biblical calendar is March 21st. Then we have the Passover lunar eclipse on April the 4th. Then we have the solar eclipse on September 13th. And the very next day, or that evening, is the head of the civil year. So and then you have the Tabernacles lunar eclipse, September 28th. So you can see, I put beginning at the very head of the biblical calendar, and the very last of the civil calendar, in those 2 years, the 4 lunar eclipses and the 4 solar eclipses fall exactly between.
So there'll be war in that period.
There'll be war during that period.
Um,
2014, the way I'm looking at it is in 2014, like Netanyahu's saying that he thinks there could be war before the end of this year. I don't really think so. They might strike Iran's facilities or something. But as far as the fulfillment of Damascus and the fulfillment of the people of Edom, I think that's going to be in 2014 and early in 2014, beginning with these tetrads and these eclipses, because
How soon we'll get out of there.
If you know anything.
well, I think in 2014, in other words, we're going to see the fulfillment of those 2 prophecies. But in 2015, because of the significance that the solar eclipse opens the biblical year and the solar eclipse opens the beginning of the civil year, I mean, it's like,
Doesn't that
It's-
represent the war to the world? Instead of just to Israel, the moon tetrads are for Israel, but the solar eclipse is world war, or
no, not,
kind of
I
a
don't think
preparation
so. I
for
think
war?
they'll be in, of course, they'll be involved in it, but see, once, in 2014, say Israel, say the IDF fulfills Damascus and wipes them off the map, and like they want to wipe Israel off the map, and the people of Edom are reduced to hardly a people anymore. I mean, they're not going to be annihilated. It said they'll be reduced to a small people.
Right.
Once those neighboring enemies are out of the picture, there's going to be a relative calm, not real peace, but there's going to be a calm come to them because the neighboring enemies are gone.
Yeah, but I mean, the world will turn and say, "Oh, you can't do that."
They can't, no, it
You don't
won't,
think they'll-
there won't be that war yet.
Won't be that yet.
Because once Israel takes care of their immediate neighborhood, their territory has expanded. They've gained resources. They've, it says they'll be living in peace in unwalled villages. Well, the unwalled villages, the Hebrew word for that means open spaces, which right now, if you go over there and you're going down Highway 90, you see little open space settlements everywhere. And you can tell the Israeli ones from, well, there's not in the West Bank, but if you go, you can tell the Palestinian homes from the Israeli homes, because the Israeli homes, for some reason, decided to start using peaked roofs, Western, and they use red tiles, so you know immediately that's Israeli. But the Palestinians still use the cinder block, flat roof, gray looking things. But I'm going to bring in some pictures to show you what a real Palestinian city looks like. It's not the refugee camps you see on the news.
Oh, no, it's,
They are just as modern and just as nice as the Israeli ones, but you're not seeing that. So in 2014, the lunar and solar eclipse, what I was saying about that, in 2015, I think will be the War of Ezekiel,
okay.
because that is ending the 2nd week of Jacob's trouble. That's bringing us into the 3rd week, which is the 70th week of Daniel. So the world isn't going to be involved in it. The world will be outraged. The world will be scared. I mean, look what Israel just did. Right? But they have to do that in 2014 in order to get the setup for the War of Ezekiel. Because in the War of Ezekiel, why are they even coming in the War of Ezekiel? And by the way, I think in the very first, I'll have to go back and print this off for you, but I think in the very first one I gave you the list of the countries with their biblical name and their modern day name. And those countries are not listed in the war of Gog and Magog. Why? Because they're gone. I mean, that's it. Once Damascus happens and the people of Edom, Psalm 83 is taken care of, they're not a problem anymore. They're not going to be attacking Israel anymore. Who's going to attack them then? Russia and Iran. Gog and Magog. So they're going to come in. And why are they going to come in? Because Israel now has all this expanded land that God has seen to give back to them. Because every time they had a war, they expanded and regained more of their biblical land that was given to them to start with.
Do you think it'll be like, you said like Damascus will be a heap of ruin, okay?
Don't ask me anything real technical.
Yeah, I know, but I was
I
thinking,
don't
there
know.
is a weapon that the Israelis have.
Oh, well, we won't get into scalar weaponry and all, but...
Nuclear.
But when Israel has gotten rid of these
They have a lot of wealth.
bad neighborhood people, and they're starting to settle in, and they've gained these resources, and by the way, they're going to have control of Jordan. They have to have control of Jordan,
Yeah.
because when the Antichrist declares himself God, the Jews are going to flee, and where are they going to flee? Into Jordan. They can't flee into Jordan now unless it's theirs. Jordan's not going to be gone. Jordan's going to actually be cooperating
You need a map.
under
You
Israeli.
need a map to actually.
I'll bring
look
my
at that.
Israeli map in.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get it.
I have a pretty good size tourist or guide map. I don't think of these things when I start talking about it. But they'll be able to go into Jordan. They'll be able to flee in there because they'll have sovereignty over it at that point. And see, just think of how quickly all this has happened in that. There's not that much time for all this to happen. It's got to happen soon. If it doesn't, my timeline's out the wazoo, and I'm going to have to redo everything. But I can't. But these signs that we're seeing, the signs that I'm telling you now about the tetrads and the solar eclipses coming together, and in the news, the politics are showing, oh, you only got 9 months to come to final status solution here, blah, blah, blah. And everything is converging. It's all just coming together so rapidly. And I can't believe sometimes how I'm seeing this, and I sit there and I watch the news and I'm going, yes, okay, wow, it's going to happen. We're almost there. It's coming. It's here. And I look over and everybody's like, so, and it's like, wake up! You just want to scream sometimes. So,
Been there quite a few times.
So remarkably, these solar eclipses will come on the opening days of those 2 Hebrew calendars in 2015. And in addition to the blood moon tetrads falling on Passover and Tabernacles. So is God trying to get our attention? On each of those solar eclipses, see if this sounds familiar. The sun will be darkened and the moon will not give her light. It reminds me of a teacher I had who, when he wanted to get our attention to begin class, would flick the lights on and off. It seems God's going to click the lights on and off shortly before the signs of the blood moon tetrads and solar eclipses for a sign. Get ready. Will this happen again in the 21st century? No. This is the only time in the 21st century. Now, there are lunar eclipses scheduled for 2033 to 34 and 2043 to 44. But I'm not worried because we'll be in the kingdom. So,
I wanted to ask you, do you know about the Revelations 12 with the woman and the sun and the moon? Do you know that's happening in September 2017?
yes. It was just so much to try to compile together.
Okay.
I was going to actually talk about that
And
next week.
If I understand correctly, Revelations 12, when that happens, that's 3.5 years into the tribulation, right?
Well, no.
Well, I
Because
guess that would start like the Great Tribulation, or that's my understanding when I read it.
what's
how-
difficult about that is you have to know about astronomy, not astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Astronomy to see when the movement is. And I'm not real good at that. But the story is there. In fact, the woman giving birth to a man-child who's caught up to heaven and the dragon is ready to devour him, that's all part of the gospel in the stars that God taught Adam.
Yeah.
And Adam passed it down. And I think the last time I was in here, I brought that out, that Noah was the first man who was never taught directly from Adam. Because Methuselah, when he died, that was the end. Methuselah was the last person to ever see Adam. Because then, if you go down through the genealogy from Adam to Methuselah, Noah was after that. So Noah had to believe by faith. He didn't have direct access to the patriarchs who were taught from Adam, that God taught Adam directly the gospel and the stars. In the book of Job, I brought this out, I think the first night I did it. In the book of Job, the oldest book supposedly, God said to Job, go tell the stars. And I didn't know anything about anything then, and I thought, go tell the stars what? You know, I'm looking at it like, go tell who? Stars are supposed to represent angels. Go tell the angel. You know, I had all these goofy things in my mind. I didn't know what it was talking about. But what God was telling Job was, go tell the stars. Go tell the gospel I've written in the stars. The whole gospel, the whole plan of redemption that I formed before the foundation of the earth is in the stars.
Yeah.
And that's what he meant. So, yeah, it's the whole, the tail of the dragon sweeping away. I mean, the whole astronomy thing, it just tells, it's not just the woman with the 12 stars representing the tribes. It's so much more complicated than that it's really hard for somebody that's not really trained in that to present it. So I just kind of touch on it.
Okay.
But I'll bring in what I have on that. But as far as the timing, I haven't really sat down and put.
I have Solarium on my computer, and you can go through and do that, and I saw a video of someone doing it, so I decided to check for myself to make sure it was real. And it happened September, right around Rosh Hashanah, right around that time in 2017. And when I go back to scripture, I really think that that's, you know, the mark of the Great Tribulation, because when I read it, that's what I feel
That's
as
what
I
I
read
get out
it.
of it too.
So, and then with you saying all this other stuff is going on with the timelines, it would make perfect sense.
Right, exactly. And does anybody know what today is? August 10th? And what's happening?
Oh, I do,
There's
it's, I want to see the timeline.
stars.
I don't know for certain, but I do know, I've watched so many videos, I do know.
I don't know what
some are
NASA
certain.
calls it. It's like
Stars are gonna
Chimash or Chimash or what, I don't know. I can't even pronounce it.
Monday's when you see.
It's supposed to be a new star.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
No.
NASA doesn't want you to know what the star is. You know what the star is that's going to be, that comes on tonight? I mean, we can't see it, and it's not visible with the naked eye yet.
It's Monday.
But the timing on this is just something.
Yeah.
This is the star of Bethlehem.
Bethlehem, yeah.
Is that Comet
Yeah.
Ison that's gonna
Yeah.
be the brightest
Yes.
star since
Yes.
the David's? Okay.
And it started today, when it came out from behind
The sun.
the sun. And as it's traveling down through, this star of Bethlehem, and again, I don't know the tracking thing of it, but I know when it will show up, depending on where you are in the world, that you can either see it with your naked eye, or at least with binoculars. You won't need a telescope. And guess when it's going to be seen like that? Hanukkah. Now on Hanukkah,
That's
what's
the
it
whole
called?
lights.
The Festival of Lights.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be when Jesus was conceived. Jesus would have been conceived naturally when light would come into the world, because he is the light of the world. So all these other things that are happening with the politics and the getting ready for the confirming of the covenant, and pretty soon there's going to be war, and we see the signs in the heavens that there's going to be war, and what these wars are going to actually be, because they have to happen before this can happen, before that can happen. Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17 have to happen before Ezekiel 38 happens. Once Ezekiel 38 happens, the confirming of the covenant happens. We're now into the last week.
Now, you don't believe the church is gonna be here during that, do you?
I don't.
Okay.
No. I don't. I know there's all kind of
There's some that do, but I strongly don't because
pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib.
we're not even mentioned, the church isn't even mentioned in like that part of Revelation.
They don't want to be controversial. That's what I was told by my pastor's wife. We can't talk about Daniel's dream. That's too controversial. You'll tick off some people. Well, so what? You know?
Do you think-
Jesus Christ is a spirit of prophecy.
Yeah. Do you think Rosh Hashanah is a holiday that you should be looking up for him, which is known as the Feast
Well,
of
we'll get into
Trumpets?
that. We'll get into that later. So it seems God's going to click the lights on and off shortly before the signs of the blood moon tetrads and the solar eclipses for a sign. For you to say, oh, that's coming right now. And then they said over here. And they said, okay, I see it happen. I know what's coming. I know what's going on.
There's
Try
your
telling it to somebody and they'll think you're nuts.
There's your latter rain too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another.
That's
The
another-
See, there's so much.
Isaiah
There's so much to it, it's too many, yeah, I know.
The Isaiah 17, now what's happening there?
Isaiah 17 is the people of Edom are,
Which are the Palestinians.
Isaiah 17:1 was the oracle against
Okay,
Damascus.
and
And then the
Damascus
rest
is
of the
where?
chapter is about other people in that area as well.
Okay.
so, let's see. So we expect it to be the third and final week of Jacob's trouble from which he will be saved. That's what 2015, new sabbatical cycle, 70th week of Daniel. Jacob's going to have the trouble that he's never seen before. It's going to be the greatest Holocaust on the face of the earth ever, or never was, Jesus said, from which he will be saved. All Israel will be saved, but not before they see him come. When they look upon him and mourn as for an only son whom they pierced, then all Israel will be saved. The 70th week will begin on this new sabbatical cycle, and we expect that at the beginning of this last sabbatical cycle, the war of Ezekiel will commence. I get ahead of myself. Setting the stage for the Jews to return to their old covenant with God, rebuild the temple, and make a covenant with death through peace with the Antichrist, who isn't revealed yet. He won't be revealed until halfway through that week. When he commits the abomination, declaring himself God. Is there a pattern in these tetrads that we can go back and look at that confirms what we are assuming? Yes, war. In 1948, Israel was born in a day. The tetrads came shortly after. And I've had an argument from one person already that, well, it was after. I said, yes, but the armistice wasn't signed.
That's right.
So
didn't
it
want
was
them to become a
technically
state.
still that happened. And it happened again in 1967 when Israel reunified Jerusalem for the first time in almost 2,000 years. And took back the Temple Mount. And Moshe Dayan gave it back.
Is that the 6th?
Moshe Dayan is,
16 war.
the reason he did that is, number one, he wasn't religious, and he didn't believe in the Bible. And he thought he was just gonna appease the Arabs. Oh, let's show him a goodwill gesture. What? So you know what happened? For the next 40 years, Israel has not come into, I mean, every time God has judged them, the first time Israel was a nation, Moses took them out of Egypt. That's the first time they became a nation. The reason God gave them the commandments was a system to live by. They had been slaves. They didn't know how to govern themselves. And what Moses got so worked up over, I can't handle all these court cases. Give me 70 priests to, help me here.
Yeah.
Sanhedrin. What did I bring up about the Sanhedrin? 2004, they reconvened.
Right.
They're back in business. They're handling cases now. And they've got their, Supreme Court of the Sanhedrin building over there. They've got the big table. They've got chairs that look like thrones. I've seen the pictures of it and everything. And they started out in Tiberias, so it was kind of quiet and kind of not really in the news. And then they came to Jerusalem, and they all tried to go up onto the Temple Mount. And the Arabs said, "Whoa, you're not taking the Sanhedrin up on the Temple Mount. We'll let you go one or two at a time." So that's what they did. But the significance of the Sanhedrin, now back in business, now reconvened, now starting to handle cases, Jesus said, "You will not see me again until you shall say, 'Blessed are you who comes in the name of the Lord.'" They had to be, so much for imminency again, they had to be back on the scene before Jesus comes back. I didn't hear anybody talking about the Sanhedrin is back. Nobody said anything. I was actually over in Israel when I found out about it. And then when I come back, I started looking up, oh yeah, they started out in Tiberias, but now they're in Jerusalem. And the significant, if they hadn't reconvened yet, Jesus couldn't come back.
Right.
Because
he
he
has
said,
to.
"You will
Will
say,
say.
you will not see me again
That's
until
right.
you shall say." So
Yeah.
these things have to happen in order to set up the next thing that's going to happen. It's all in God's plan. It was in His plan before the foundation of the world. Just like our names were written in the book of life before the foundations of the world. Every person that ever was going to live is written in a book of life. But and you can get blotted out.
Yeah.
And most will. Can we get blotted out? No, because we are in the Lamb's book of life. Our names were written with God's foreknowledge that we would be saved someday and come to Him. And we can't be lost. When you believe, you receive. He keeps you. I know whom I have believed, and I have committed unto Him against that day. I don't know if I left out a word. But we have eternal security. And I know that's debatable on some people, but no, you believe and you're saved, and you're safe. You're not just saved, you're safe. He keeps you. We can't keep ourselves.
That's right.
We cannot keep ourselves. If we had to keep ourselves, it would just be a constant, it'd be a daily, it already is. It already is. But that's the only thing that can keep you, I don't even know what the word is to use.
Is that what the peace is all about up here? Not the
you
peace
in-
that the world has.
And
Keep you
there are
intact, keep
times-
you in tune, keep you,
Yeah, I know whom I have believed, and I have that which I've committed against that day. If I didn't believe that, I'd feel like the way I am, I'd feel like I was lost that day. and I'd have to start over again. But he keeps us. And because we belong to him, and we can, like what Mindy brought in the devotional, and what we ask, and we're already seated in the, as far as he's concerned, we're already there. With God, there is no time. This time is just for us on earth. There is no time in eternity. That's why God changes not. He knows the end from the beginning. He wrote our names before we ever lived. He wrote our names in the book of life. The Jews have a tradition that they believe that at Mount Sinai, every soul that would ever live was present. And that's what one of the guides told me over there. We believe that every soul that would ever live or be conceived or anything, their soul was at Mount Sinai when God gave the commandments. Now, I don't know. I mean,
Well,
that's
yeah.
tradition.
Traditions of our.
But when you stop and think about, well, God knows our name. He
Yeah.
wrote our name down before we were. Maybe we were there. Who knows, you know? There's strange things that happen sometimes, like, I grew up in an area where there was no synagogues, there was no Jews. I didn't know what a Jew was. And my grandfather would call me his little Jew. It was like, I thought it was just like deer, you know, like my little sweetie pie or something. I didn't know what a Jew meant when I was little.
What did he mean?
And I don't know what he meant, but then in later years when I started studying with my Hebrew teacher and stuff, who was a Holocaust survivor, she said to me one day, and I had never told her that before that, but she said, "You're just," how'd she put it? "You're just a little Gentile. You're just a little Gentile girl with a Jewish heart." And I said, I have always felt, once I knew what a Jew was, I felt I was one. I don't know why. I don't know why. I asked if I was adopted or something, you know. So, but I know I'm Indian.
American
They told me
Indian?
that, yeah.
Yeah, safe.
Seneca.
Seneca.
So, here's my next sentence. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay, here's where I left off. Is there a pattern in these tetrads that go back and look at, that confirms what we're saying? Yes, war. There were blood moon tetrads in 49 and 50 following the birth of the nation Israel and the War of Independence, and there was war in 67, 68 when Israel reunified Jerusalem for the first time in almost 2,000 years. But what about the peace talks that have already gotten underway right now? I mean, they've been working on it. There's ample reason to believe it will all end in failure. Well before the 9 months are up. And while everyone knows that a full-fledged peace agreement and an end of the conflict is not attainable, there are issues of borders and Jerusalem and refugees, and Netanyahu might think about an interim solution, or he just might be bluffing, or he might just be buying time. But the question is, will the failure of the talks lead to the war of Psalm 83? Or to the burden of Damascus, Isaiah 17? Consider that these two prophecies, set to be administered by God through the exceedingly great army, which is the Israeli Defense Forces, must and will be fulfilled before the war of Ezekiel 38. I'm kind of just repeating myself because I got ahead of myself. How do we know that? We know it because the coalition of Arab forces that come against Israel are no longer mentioned in the Ezekiel war. They're the closest neighbors, they're not mentioned. they're proxies for Russia and Iran anyway. That's why Russia and Iran are the ones gonna come in. God says, you got this territory, you got these resources, you're living in unwalled villages now, it's relative peace. I'm putting the hooks in the jaws and drawing them down onto you. Does it seem fair? No, not humanly speaking. For me, I'd be jumping up and down saying, yay, Israel's getting more and more land back. They deserve it. I mean, look what they've been through. They're now trying to get them to go back to the 67 lines. Did we give Texas back to Mexico? Or did,
We're-
you know, it's
We
a,
kinda did.
well, kind of. But it doesn't, in the humanistic way, doesn't, looking at, okay, say all this happens and Israel gets this territory, does it seem fair?
Oh, I think it does. Because
Well-
look at how much wealth has been taken from the Jewish people over the centuries, in Spain and England and all these places where they took their wealth and kicked them out.
No, I mean, does it seem fair that the Ezekiel war, that Gog and Magog is gonna come down on them after they finally have some peace? No, but as part of God's plan.
Right.
The Jews are still in rebellion, they're still not in covenant with him, the new covenant. They need to be brought back to him, so he needs to breathe his spirit into them. And right now, yeah, they got a great army, and they're gonna accomplish these things with their exceedingly great army. But there's no breath in them yet. They're the dry bones who are come alive, but they don't have the spirit in them yet. They've got to have something, get that spirit in them. What is it going to be? It's going to be Russia and Iran coming down onto the hills of
Great hordes.
Jerusalem. And God's going to fight for them. And supernaturally, he's going to confuse the enemy, just like he always did in the past wars in the Old Testament. They're going to fight each other. They're going to kill each other. He's going to rain down fire and brimstone on them. And they're going to say, we didn't do this. Our God delivered us.
Would you talk a little bit about what the Jews believe about the Messiah? I mean, from your experiences over in Israel, like they believe there's two Messiahs, there's a suffering Messiah and there's a king Messiah. Do you know anything about that? Have you read anything about
Yeah, I do, but I don't know how to tie it into this, and I got to finish it up because I'm getting the eyeball.
Getting the hairy eyeball.
The eye that I used to give her.
They're looking for the Messiah, and at some point they're going to realize, they're going to say, hold it a second, maybe the two Messiahs we're looking for are actually the one Messiah.
Well, when they're going to think the Antichrist is the Messiah until he declares himself God. And they've been down that road before. There's no man that's God.
That's
Get out of here.
right.
Don't come down, don't come off your rooftops. Don't go in your house and get your clothes. Get out. Pray it's not the Sabbath. Why? Because nothing flies or runs on the Sabbath.
Matthew. Yeah, but he
It's-
suffers a
Yeah.
fatal wound. And he,
Yeah, I haven't figured out when that comes in yet.
will not,
But when he declares himself God, I wonder, it won't be the Messianic Jews that go, because in my opinion, I always have to preface it with that, in my opinion, the Messianic Jews are going to be gone in the rapture. So who are the Jews that are going to believe and get out of there? The Orthodox Jews. Because 85% of the Israelis are secular. They don't know nothing. They don't. I mean, over there, they obey the law, the government's laws about, you can walk down the main road in Jerusalem and nobody's going to run over you because there's nobody moving. But they do that out of respect because you're not arrested for violating it, but they respect it. People will just stay home. Some of them get in their cars and beat it out of town before the Sabbath starts, and we've done it too. We get in the car and we go to Abu Ghash. The Arab restaurants are all set up around Jerusalem. You can get out of town in 15, 20 minutes and have a great meal and spend the evening and, you know, sneak back in. Or if you're Orthodox, you go to the hotels, and that's a trip. In the hotel, now I'm getting off on Israel, but in the hotels in Israel, the only people, well, for instance, when I was over there when a lot of trouble was going on, there weren't any tourists. The only people in the hotel besides nuts, like me, were Jews, the Orthodox Jews. And they would come in with their kids, and they're typically, they have, 10, 14 kids and everything. And they come in, and the women are dressed to the hilt because they're not doing any work. And, they're beautifully attired, and the kids are dressed, just like Sunday used to be with Christians, when you dress up and put your white gloves on, and everybody wore their hat, and, they dressed up. And they come in, and the men are over in this section, and I love it because they're standing there, white shirts, black pants, reading the prayer books, M16 over their shoulder, in the hotel. They don't go anywhere without it. I mean, not all of them. No, the black hats, there's different ones, okay? They're really religious and semi-religious, and, just like anything, but the men would be, a lot of them would have, their kippah on and their rifle, and they're reading the Bible. And the kids run rampant. They have free reign of the hotels. It drives you crazy. They have the hotel sets up the big smorgasbord for them, because the elevators are Shabbat elevators. They activate them so they stop on every floor, so they don't have to push a button, because you're not allowed to push a button. It's work. You can't, they have motion detector lights, because you can't turn the light switch on. And it's just, what I was saying was, when the Jews flee, who are the ones going to flee? The ones who say, that man is not a Messiah. I mean, he's not God. He says he's the Messiah. We believed him. He confirmed the covenant. He's letting us live here. He's doing this. He's doing that. We have a peace agreement with him. The Oslo Accords have been reconfirmed. But he just said he's God. What did God mean? Bang.
We're talking about the old order of the Jews.
That's
They're the
my
ones that know.
opinion, who's the ones going to flee. Because the rest of them don't know. They
The
don't.
Orthodox, they're the ones that,
You won't be Torah observant, so that will be
Right.
the thing that will tell them that this guy's not real here.
But is that when